What up, guys? I wanted to film in my little cubby, man. I got in there, crawled in there, and yeah, it looks super weird and creepy. So that didn't work at all. But I'm over on the other side and doing just fine. So uh, let's uh, let's talk about some race sensitive topics because you know this age that we're living in where people are afraid to talk about certain topics. As soon as I detect fear about wanting to discuss a topic, to me that's like it's like I'm a shark and there's blood in the water. I firmly believe that we really need to be able to discuss anything and everything openly, especially the most important topics, especially the topics that people are most sensitive about. And you know, racism is a really interesting one because obviously racism exists, and it's a real thing, but obviously also it's been blown out of proportion, and it's being used as like almost like McCarthy era scare tactic, like you know, it's like calling someone a witch, calling someone racist. It's being thrown around by anyone and everyone as this way to demean another person with no real substance. It's like, I don't like what you're saying, so I'll just call you a racist. So yeah, this is a bad situation, and I don't know. Here's my history for starters. So I grew up in what I can kind of consider to be sort of like the first completely non-racist generation, maybe in world history, right? Growing up in the United States in the 80s, I mean, all of my favorite musicians, actors, athletes, they're all black. I mean, all of them. To the point where at my kindergarten graduation, they asked all the kids what they wanted to be when they grew up, and I just straight up told them, I want to be black. Like, that's it for me, guys. Like, I've heard the rap music, and I've seen the break dancing, and I've seen the boxers, and they're all super ripped with these awesome looking six packs. I always used to tell my parents, like, I want to have bumps in my stomach. I want to have bumps in my stomach when I grow up. Mr. T, are you kidding me? I mean, this greatest human being that ever lived that ever walked the face of the earth, according to every 6-year-old boy in America. So, anyway, I was totally sold. I had a mohawk, like Mr. T. I dressed like Mr. T. I rummaged through my mom's jewelry and put on as much gold as I could, I could get around my neck. I mean, I was fully into it. Of course, the school. I don't think we had. I think we were all white at this tiny little school. Maybe 20 kids in my class or something. Um, that didn't fly. They weren't going to announce to all the parents that Matt wants to be black when he grows up. No, they were sure to tell, to tease it out a little bit more about a black what exactly. So anyway, they asked some questions, and it was determined more that I wanted to be a boxer. It was really that look of Marvin Hagler, all sweaty, with his bumps in his stomach that had me 100% sold that this is what I wanted to be when I grew up. So anyway, that's how that went, and yeah, I just grew up in that kind of environment. I was around very few African Americans. I lived in Nashville, which is super segregated. Super segregated. Everybody in my school was white. I went to a private school, and we literally had one black girl in the high school, and that was it. And then later on, there was one uh, kind of like Urkelly black kid who was big into the music department, and that was that. I mean, that was my exposure to the African Americans. I'm singling out this race because obviously the racism that most people are talking about when they say racism, they're talking about specifically African Americans. Like, yeah, Asians may get some, you know, some racism cast their way, but they're doing just fine. They're out earning white people. They have lower incarceration rates, higher graduation rates, lower teen pregnancy rates, lower drug abuse rates. Every kind of social metric that you could possibly assign to Asians, to see, hey, how are you doing as an ethnic group? They're just killing it. They're doing better than white people in every category. So in the United States. So yeah, racism is obviously not their problem. They don't seem to have any problems whatsoever. So anyway, that's that. So when I talk about racism, obviously the big issue is, there's this ethnic group, African Americans in the United States, that is doing pretty poor financially, pretty poor in terms of, making it to college, pretty poor in terms of having stable marriages, having stable homes, pretty poor when it comes to crime rates, pretty poor when it comes to drug abuse statistics and whatnot. And, just compared to other ethnic groups. And you can subdivide ethnic groups, a ton. I could get on the computer someday and we could talk a little bit more in depth and really subdivide it by group to look at, for example, income, which is obviously the most important thing when it comes to your social well-being. But anyway, so that's that. So there's this group of people, this ethnic group that is it's not thriving, not making a lot of progress. There's clearly huge inequalities between the African American community and other ethnic groups. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating because, as a white person, I grew up not only not racist, African Americans were my heroes, man. Like, they were everything. I always think about like the Dave Chappelle skit with Tyrone Biggins. Is that like something like that? I don't know. It's the one with the black white supremacist, and he yells at some kids playing rap music. He's blind, by the way. That's why he doesn't know he's black. But Bigsby, that's his name. He yells out the window, turn that music off, N-word, and then the two white kids that are in the car get excited and high-five themselves over being called the N-word. So that's kind of like where I'm at. I just was living in all white areas where we were holding black men on this pedestal as the coolest people on the face of the earth. We would call each other the N-word back and forth. Of course, we're in all white area, so completely safe to do that. We'd walk around, with a limp and, just doing everything we could to emulate, what we perceived as that culture from what the media showed us. We're listening to NWA and Snoop Dogg and, watching a million movies. And, our heroes are Wesley Snipes and Mr. T and all the rappers and et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't have this kind of like this racism or negative sentiments. It was the opposite. And so it's really frustrating to see that this, massive divide still exists. And really what it is at the end of the day is it's a lingering socioeconomic inequality that exists, right? Due to racism that existed decades ago, first of all, culture has sprung out of that. And that culture it doesn't value education as much, right? The Asian community, they're studying really hard and getting great grades and getting like beaten by their parents if they don't get straight A's. If you come home with a B, you might get your ass kicked. Your tiger mom or whatever is going to be all over you, and you're expected to perform well academically. And it's not a negative thing. I mean, getting straight A's is not uncool. But in the African American culture, there's tremendous resistance. Anybody who's studying hard or speaking eloquently with proper English is looked at as an Uncle Tom, and the culture itself is antagonistic to, the values that some of the other ethnic groups have that are helping them be really successful. So that's a problem. But that's not because there is something about their race that makes them that way. It's about, you know, impoverished areas create a culture that stems from poverty that is different from the cultures that stem from wealth and prosperity and affluence, right? So, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're raised by a single mom who is addicted to drugs and you're completely poor and you go to a terrible school and your friends are picking on and beating up any of the kids who are getting good grades or something like that, or putting them down on the playground or whatever, that's just not a good environment for you to do the things that you need to do in Western society in order to be able to financially compete, compete economically, compete academically. If you're going to be successful, there's certain routes that you can take where your probability is high, and then there's routes that you can take where your probability is low, right? Obviously, everybody's familiar with African Americans thinking that, they either have to become rappers or professional athletes in order to be successful because the rest of the world just will not allow you to be successful because this racism boogeyman out there is keeping you from being able to be successful. And that's a terrible mentality that's not true and that is very, very harmful. And that's why I'm really frustrated with racism, because the fact that it just keeps lingering on and lingering on. When is it going to be over? I mean, how much progress do we have to make? How clear does it have to be that you can be successful if you do quote unquote the right things? How much longer is this going to go on before we do have equality? We all want equality. Not everyone, but the vast majority want to see people succeed. I heard Deion Sanders say something like a few weeks ago, like nobody wants to see a black coach with all black players be successful. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Everybody wants black people to be successful. Why do you think Tiger Woods is like the greatest hero? Everybody loves and adores Tiger Woods. I mean, he had all these horrible marital affairs and transgressions that everybody would just hate the dude, but they still just adore the dude. I think of like the new tennis sensation, Coco Gauff. People didn't get as on board with the Williams sisters as athletes, but I mean, everybody is like loves loves Coco, right? I don't know. I know I'm just bringing up examples of athletes and things like that, but anyway, the athletes are proof that there's a huge fan base of people who love and adore these people, and the color of their skin. Not only does it not matter, I think it actually helps. I think it makes them, because it's it's uncommon, it's rare for a black person to be great at golf. When they are great at golf, it's that much more exciting. You don't tune in to see somebody who's great at something, who's always been great at something, like stereotypically great, be great is, it's kind of boring. We like to see something that's out of the norm, that's unusual. So anyway, I don't know. I get frustrated that it keeps lingering on, and I think actually at this point, the focus on racism and everything is actually working against people who are still not achieving equality. So I don't know. I don't know what the future holds and where we go from here. How do we overcome the racial, divides that there are in socioeconomic, standing that are remnants of decades ago? How do we overcome, the culture that is kind of self-defeating, and help that improve to value the things that the rest of society values, so that more and more people can have success. There can be more doctors and lawyers and things like that, and but until then, nobody's going to hand it to anybody and say, here, go do it. We see, I keep bringing up Asians, but also Indians and other ethnic groups. They go out there and they're hitting the books and studying really hard and, going crazy on the flashcards, and then, they get straight A's and get into good schools, become doctors and lawyers, and have successful lives, and that's it. They do the same is true with the field of science. Your basic STEM people. I know the Indian community is like super focused on STEM, right? Just culturally, like it's STEM, 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 and those are the industries where there's the best, the most plentiful and abundant, high-paying jobs, and lo and behold, they're the top earning ethnic group in the entire United States by median household income or whatever. So anyway, I don't think the color of a person's skin at this point has any bearing on whether they can be successful or not. But the remnants of racism from decades ago still exist, and those factors are definitely keeping people from being successful. And obviously a cultural revolution that happens from within would fix it. But how do you organize that? How do you make that happen? I don't know. But anyway, I think it's a fascinating topic, and I certainly don't want to be shy or timid about talking about it because of the color of my skin. That doesn't help anybody. And same thing for you. Go, if you have something to say it in the comments. We can hash it out and have an interesting discussion, and don't be afraid. I certainly won't be banning any comments or anything like that. I'm open to any perspective that anybody has, and I think that's important. So anyway, hopefully you can foster a good discussion and continue to foster good discussions about any topics, those sensitive ones, in particular being the most important conversations to be had of them all.